Hi, I'm Michelle Segrest, and welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast.
This podcast is inspired by my 3-volume book series on the evolution of modern manufacturing. Each episode features engaging conversations with game-changing experts discussing the processes and innovations that are changing the landscape of modern manufacturing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes, and take just a couple of seconds to leave a review. And then go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a single episode.
We have a great topic today. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence, as you know, is used heavily when it comes to search engines or e-commerce, but there's a pretty big gap when it comes to the physical world. It's not nearly as abundant as it should be. How can this technology be used in the world of physical infrastructure? How can manufacturers use artificial intelligence to drive specific outcomes? In today's podcast, we will answer these questions for you and also take a deep dive into examples to find out exactly how AI can be used to create business value. It's my pleasure to introduce our special guest to the podcast. Pratik Joshi is the founder of Pluto Shift. He's a published author of 13 books on artificial intelligence, so he's a well-known expert. He has been featured in high-profile publications like Forbes, CNBC, TechCrunch, and Bloomberg. So he's out there, he knows what he's talking about, and he's going to give us a lot of insight today. This is a really interesting topic that I know you all care about, so let's get to it. Pratik, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Michelle. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. It's a pleasure to have you here. So can you start out just by telling us a little bit about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and why artificial intelligence is your area of expertise.
Yeah, I have spent my entire career in the field of artificial intelligence. And just to kind of take a step back, the reason the physical world interests me is as a builder of products, I've built AI products for the virtual infrastructure, like as you mentioned, search engines, e-commerce, and through this process ended up publishing a few books and realized that it's very ubiquitous. And when you go to Google, you type something, the answers show up. Most people don't even realize that that's a real AI system working every single second, every single day. But when it comes to the physical world, there's a pretty big gap. So that was the core motivation behind launching Pluto Shift, is to build a product for the physical world that can be as ubiquitous as it is. And the other kind of theme that came together is I grew up in a small town called Gulbarga, the southern part of India, and it's a dry town, meaning water is the bit of a luxury. It was a bit of a luxury growing up, and that kind of stuck with me. So when I got the chance to explore how can we apply this tool, this AI, to the world of physical infrastructure, water was the first topic that came to mind. So the way we got started was bringing AI to any physical infrastructure that handles water. It could be, like for example, there are pipes that move water, there are treatment plants that treat water. So basically storing, moving, distributing, all this infrastructure handling water was the starting point. And now, obviously, we have grown beyond water to beverage, food, energy, data centers. So that's a little bit about the genesis of how it came together.
Okay, good. That's really interesting. And this audience is well versed in the areas of artificial intelligence for the most part. They know a lot about some of the groundbreaking innovations that are happening in manufacturing all over the world, of course. But I'm wondering if you could tell us, what is your definition of artificial intelligence? What does that term mean to you?
Artificial intelligence is the ability for a machine to do tasks in an intelligent way. And what that means is can a system exercise judgment and make a smart decision. Now, so that way, I would look at AI as the goal, right?
Okay.
It's a state of being intelligent, and machine learning is a vehicle to get there. It's one of the vehicles. It's not the only vehicle, but it's certainly the most popular, dominant vehicle that people use to achieve the goal of AI. And data serves as a fuel for that vehicle. So that's how we relate the terms AI and machine learning and data.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So, can you give us some examples? What are some examples of artificial intelligence out there? It doesn't even have to relate to manufacturing. Just what are some things we see
Mm-hmm.
every day that are could be defined as artificial intelligence?
Yeah, that's a really interesting examples. A popular example would be Google, the search engine, where you go in, you type, the way it fetches information, the answers to your questions, it displays it. That's an AI system. Another example would be when you go to Amazon.com to buy products, you'll see a list of recommendations. Hey, you might also be interested in this, and those recommendation engines work pretty well. And that's another example of an AI system learning about your shopping behaviors and recommending items, because at the end of the day, uh, Amazon wants you to buy more products from them, which is more business for them. So that's another example, e-commerce. A third example would be Netflix, one of the best companies on the planet to deploy machine learning at scale. And also their their engineers are legendary. But Netflix employs machine learning, they've built an AI system that recommends movies, that learns your behavior. They use all of the data to create new shows, and people end up watching all these shows they never knew they wanted, and they become like the most watched show, right? So it's amazing how they put that to practice. So these are just a couple of very well-known, famous examples that we use day to day. Apple Watch is another very good example. iPhone, the face unlock is another really common good example. All of this is
Okay,
AI
yeah.
applied to specific problems.
Okay, that makes sense. I've always wondered how Netflix knows that I like true crime or that I like, rom-coms or that, I like mysteries. I've always wondered how they knew. And I guess they just learn from my behavior and
Yeah.
somehow it knows. And same thing with Google and Amazon. Every time I buy
Hmm.
something, then I get all kinds of recommendations along those same lines. So that is what we see every day as artificial intelligence. So,
Yeah.
what are some examples that we could see in manufacturing? How are
Yeah.
manufacturers using artificial intelligence?
Yeah. It's the good thing is in the last about 8 to 10 years, uh, companies have gotten really good at collecting data. And what I mean by that is just taking going a little bit back. Uh, 20 years ago, there wasn't an inexpensive way to gather data about temperature and pressure and flow rates, because the sensors were bulky, they were expensive, they're not connected to the internet. It's a whole bunch of problems. But today, sensors are very fast, lightweight, inexpensive. They're wirelessly connected to the internet. So it's like if you're running a beverage facility in the middle of nowhere, yeah, throw in a few sensors and you can sit in your headquarters, closely monitoring the pressure and temperature and flow rate. So it's amazing. So for AI to be relevant in manufacturing, the data collection problem had to be solved first, and they did. It's progress at a very good pace. Now, with that, the way manufacturers use AI, step one, resource consumption is a very big problem area, very important, and thereby fertile ground. So, a simple example: if you're a beverage company, you use electricity, right, and raw material to make your product, and you know, what they do is, okay, to manufacture a bottle of ketchup, right? How much electricity do we need? So to measure that. And then the next step is, okay, how do we reduce that? Because as you know, electricity is very expensive, and any marginal gains translates to millions and millions of dollars. So collecting all the data to reduce electricity consumption is a very good example of how AI can be used. Another example would be increasing yield, meaning keeping everything the same. How can we get more uh, for per unit of resource consumed? So that's another example. Third example would be, let's say you have thousands of pumps out in the field. How do you detect which one's about to fail, right, based on all the historical data? So these are very practical ways in which AI is being used, and it's creating business value.
Okay, good. And can manufacturers easily implement artificial intelligence into what they're already doing? Like, how hard is it for them to implement smart technologies like this that can help them down the road? And how expensive is it?
That's a great question, because the way we have seen this in the market is there are all sorts of approaches that people have taken. Right, on the one extreme, you have the top-down approach where somebody decides at the top, okay, the entire company is going to do this, and they embark upon this enormous project, and then it's 5 years later, nothing has moved. Right, so so the top-down approach has been a bit of a hit and miss. And so a more modern approach would be the bottom-up approach, where a small team of 5 to 10 people, they decide that, okay, we have this task that can be automated with AI, and here's the benefit. Meaning, if we do this, we'll reduce this by X%. So it's very quantifiable. It's focused. It's small scale. And so what that does, it creates a success template, which can then be scaled with team number 2, team number 3, and then across the entire company. And this is the way to bring new technology like AI into the mix. Is you start with the problem, right? Is there a low hanging fruit? And what we have seen is uh, automating simple tasks is a great way to start. Meaning, let's say you have 200 membranes, and right now there's a human who's just literally walking around to check which membrane is failing, which membrane is about to fail. Now, that's a very simple task that can be automated by an AI system, so that it's going to tell you, hey, you come in at 9 o'clock, and membrane number 47 is the place you need to look at. The rest are doing fine. You don't need to waste your time on the other 99. So this is a very good example of how a very real task of keeping an eye on the membranes can be moved over to an AI system, so that the operations team can focus on the high value urgent items, which is membrane 47, right? So that's the kind of path to success we have seen.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. How does some of these different types of artificial intelligence interact with other smart technologies? Because I know they're all talking to each other, right?
Yeah, the way it has been built is usually they are integrated into other systems, because it has to work seamlessly for it to actually create value. So simple example would be, let's say every time a pump breaks down or overheats, or every time there's an event like that, we want a ticket to be filed so that somebody can go take a look, right? So that task now can be automated. So if the AI system detects that the pump has overheated, it can automatically file a ticket, so that the next person who comes in, it's at the top of their inbox, right? So it does interact with the ticketing system in this example. It can also interact with, let's say, there's another system that sends you an SMS or an alert, right? There's another system that is gathering pressure data that needs to feed data into AI systems. So it does interact with systems within that environment, and it should, because that's the way to make it work seamlessly.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so how can we deploy some of these AI strategies or AI technologies into the world of physical infrastructure? We talked about that a little bit in the opening. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, 100%. The areas, or the world of manufacturing, it's huge. It's an enormous industry, and some sectors lend themselves nicely to use AI, mostly because of the nature of their business. A simple example would be if you are in a sector that consumes a lot of electricity or chemicals, right, to make your product, then it's AI can be a very useful, effective tool to attack that very important business problem, right? And also,
Okay.
if you are in a company that has already installed sensors 5 years ago, has been gathering data, you are just in a better position to do that. So a simple example would be beverage. Let's say you're a beverage company and you, I'll take a different example, right? As a beverage company, you buy water from the city, and then it goes through your plant, and then it becomes the end product. Now, when you buy water from outside, it's raw. I mean, you got to clean it, you got to treat it, you got to prep it. And so during that process, right, you buy 100 gallons, 80 is like the usable part of the water, and then it becomes your product. Now, can we increase that? How about 85? Because you're paying for 100 gallons, you may as well use all 100. So
Right.
that's called water recovery, meaning how much of the water you buy can you recover to make your product. So that's a very useful template for a beverage company, because every percentage point is millions of dollars. So I think and that's a very very good problem for an AI system to solve, because most of it depends on data and the levers you pull, because it's 80 because somebody is ignoring some signal somewhere along the line. So I think increasing from 80 to 85 to 90 is millions of dollars. So that's one way a beverage company can use it. Another example would be, let's say you're a company, let's say you're a food company, and you use many pumps in your operations. And through normal course of operations, pumps undergo changes, meaning with time the performance decreases. So out of the 200 pumps, none of them are going down, but suddenly you see that your energy consumption keeps going up. You're just spending more on paying the bill. So then I think an AI system is really good at figuring out, okay, out of the 200 pumps, 199 are fine. The pump number 137 is consuming 5x the energy because it's kind of old, or it's inefficient, or it needs maintenance. So, and throughout, if they leave it, if they don't do anything throughout the year, that adds up to tens of millions of dollars, right? So it's in a big company. So that's another way that AI can be used for a manufacturer. So yeah, I can keep going, many examples, but these are a couple of very concrete examples that have driven success.
Yeah, no, those are great. I think it's really interesting when we think of artificial intelligence. We kind of think of something that you can't see, but that's not exactly the case, right? I mean, you can see and feel and touch some of this kind of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. You can. It's like it's the thing that enables a lot of this. So we end up interacting with the system as a result, but we don't see it because AI is just it's lines of code. It's sitting in the back end. We don't see it, but yeah, we can feel its effects, right, on business and consumers.
Do you find that some end users, whether it's a manufacturer or somebody else, are they a little bit afraid of technologies like artificial intelligence just because they just don't know enough about it?
Yeah, I think as with any new technology, I think it's important to understand it so that you know how to wield it, right? It's like a sword, right? So you can use it for good purposes, you can use it for bad purposes. But I think just if you know how to use this tool, because at the end of the day, AI is just mathematics. I mean, really, that's what it is. It's a little bit of mathematics, a little bit of code, a little bit of data, and it does useful stuff, right? So that's how I look at it. So if you are doing a task over and over again, like 15 times a day, every day, it's just not worth your time, because it's a simple task that should be offloaded to software, right? So that's how I look at it. So I think once people understand that there isn't a single magical AI model that can do everything and take their jobs. It doesn't exist, right? AI is really good at doing one single thing at a time, and it does it really well with good accuracy. But it's not, at least based on where we are today. It cannot it cannot make these very, in the real world, situations are fluid, and it just can't make those decisions on a single model. So I think just knowing that AI as a tool can do that one thing really well, you offload that task, because humans, we have many tasks to do. We have to make decisions with very incomplete information. AI cannot function with incomplete data, right? Humans, we live in the world of probabilities, right? There's no certainties in the world, there's only probabilities. So I think just understanding that it's a tool to automate simple decision making so that you can focus on items that require a little complex decision making with more uncertainty and less data. I think that's how you leverage AI. And as with cloud or any other e-commerce, as with any other technology, I think as it gains mainstream consciousness, people realize they have been using it for 20 years. I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, that's right. Right. And what about small to medium sized companies? Are they able to implement AI strategies and AI technologies into? I mean, is it affordable? Is it doable for a smaller company?
Yeah, absolutely. It's depending on where you are, you can figure out what needs to be automated. Like a very simple example would be, let's say you're a very small company and you serve, maybe 100, 200 customers, people, let's say, and let's say they keep sending you checks or receipts, right? So basically, either you can hire a couple of people to sort through all of that, or there are simple AI solutions that can scan and quickly upload that data to your accounting system or QuickBooks. So again, a simple example where it's a very critical function, like just accounting, right? So your customers or your vendors, they're just sending you papers, and somebody needs to put them in a system, right? So it's a very simple example of how even a small company can use very simple AI tools, because if you have to hire people to do this, one, it's just not an efficient use of capital, right? You can use the same to hire for other functions, better service customers. So if you find, even for a small company, they can do that. Another example would be, let's say you have your customer data in one system, your accounting data in another system, your website data in a third system, your order information in the fourth system. Again, it's like a human is hiring a human to do this very repetitive manual task is not only inefficient, they're going to make mistakes, right? It's just too much to handle. So I think this is another example for a small company to use a simple AI tool to quickly automate the simple task so that they can focus on customer facing items, more urgent, more important.
That makes perfect sense. That seems doable. So, how can manufacturers discover artificial intelligence use cases for their particular sector?
I think it starts with identifying the problem. Meaning, even with or without AI, I think step one would be, what's on top of your mind for this year, right? The different companies have different things. Right? Some people are worried. Some people have, hey, we got to increase our market share. We got to increase employee retention. Some other people are saying, hey, our most trusted personnel, they're retiring, right? And all the knowledge is going away from them. So, and somebody else is saying we spend way too much on chemicals to make our product, right? So I think even without talking, everybody knows, there's one thing really at the top of mind when you look at what's about to come for your business. And from there, you start and you break down. Okay, so our big problem is we spend too much on chemicals. Okay, we have 15 plants, right? Obviously, we can't simultaneously do all 15. So who is the top consumer of chemicals? Okay, plant number 4, right? That's like accounts for 80% of our chemical consumption. So you go there, and then you realize. So basically, you start with a big problem, you back into it, and then you realize, okay, now that we have this information, we have collected, we know everything that impacts chemical consumption, right? Pressure, temperature, flow rate, what's coming in, what's going out, how many people we have. So all this information can go in, and then an AI system can then get to work to help you identify, okay, this is what's causing it. And on an ongoing basis, right? This is what's causing it. Here are the levers you can pull, and here is the limit. Meaning, obviously, ideally, you can spend zero, but then the product doesn't go out, right? So that's not ideal. So the goal is to gather the relevant information, and then AI system can come into play. So the way I look at it is, AI is more like a nitro boost to an engine that's already working, right? If you don't have an engine, like there's no core engine, AI can't do much. The core business here is you're making a product people are buying. AI can accelerate it, but if you're not selling a ketchup bottle, it just doesn't matter, right? You can use AI all you want, but there should be a core engine that's already running. And when I say engine, it means a thing that your customers are buying with or without AI, right?
Something that's already working. You have to already have a good business model and something that's already working. And this is just to enhance that and make life easier and more efficient.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we mentioned earlier about sometimes there's a fear. There's a fear of new technology, especially with old school people. Like I'm an old school person. It took me forever just to embrace using a smartphone. I thought I would never give up my BlackBerry. And that was, a big step for me. The flip phone is what I really loved. But there is this fear. There is this way of doing things that people just get used to. And so they don't like change. But how can manufacturers drive this behavioral change that really is needed to have successful artificial intelligence implementations? How can manufacturers drive that?
It starts with getting the people involved in defining the problem itself. Right? Usually, what happens is somebody at the top defines that this is the big vague problem that we want to address. And then by the time it comes down to that person who's actually running the machine, it just is just completely lost in translation. So I think step one is, if you want that plant number 4 to be your pilot, or the way you want to test it out, you should get the people on the ground involved in identifying and recognizing that, okay, chemical consumption is a problem. Right? It is a problem, and it's an opportunity too, meaning because if you solve this, it directly goes to our bottom line, everything gets better, and we're all happy. So the point is, get the people who, all the way from people who sign the checks to the managers who manage and operators who actually do the work, all of them combined, they have to agree that, okay, this is the number one problem we want to solve. And then after that, what does the solution look like? Right? Forget AI. What is the solution? The solution is to do X, right? X could be increase yield, reduce chemical consumption, reduce electricity consumption, reduce the number of support tickets per day. It could be anything. It basically agreeing that that's the lever that needs to be pulled so solve the problem would be a key next step. And once that's done, now people are invested in the problem. They have recognized it as a problem. They know what to do. Then after that, I think behavior change becomes a little more natural, because people are now actively looking for solutions because they've identified it as a problem. So I think that's the way to drive behavior change, because as with any new technology, it just takes focused effort to kind of bring it to life, create a success template that others can see and say, okay, it worked for them. Maybe I should try it.
So baby steps, and let people see those successes and how this kind of technology can improve their lives and make their jobs easier, and then grow from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, seems simple enough, right? Well, this is the new year. We're in January of 2022 right now, and what do you think this new year is going to bring to manufacturing? What are some of the trends you're seeing out there right now?
Yeah, when people realize that one of the biggest shifts with pre and post COVID is that people realized they have to do their work remotely, or at least have the ability to work remotely, because
Yeah,
there were
that's true.
times when, okay, you couldn't go into the plant, but you got to know at all times what's happening, right? So because of that, I think in the manufacturing world, there's big this recognition that we need data to come to us remotely, even if nobody's there. I think that gave rise to a whole bunch of new companies and technologies that are actively making their way into the field. Right. So recently, a nice company, Sansara, they went IPO, really good, smooth company, and I think they've been building a strong business, but I think COVID really accelerated the need, right? So, and similarly, other companies like Snowflake went. I mean, they went IPO a while back, but I think just recognizing the fact that data is important and remote monitoring is important. I think that has really uh, accelerated the trend. So I think in 2022, what's going to happen is more companies are going to be conscious about collecting data continuously, regularly, good quality data, because to build any good AI system, or even a reasonable, simple AI system, you need data coming in
Sure.
every day,
Yeah.
every second, and the world is your oyster. If you have data, you can do anything. So I think this is going to be the year where data collection continues to get more and more robust, mature, and more applications within manufacturing are going to come to life. Like there are companies that are building for all parts of the stack: data collection, data storage, retrieval, movement, monitoring, interesting machine learning applications, business intelligence. So up and down the stack, companies are building very interesting use cases. So I think that's going to continue very strongly this year.
I agree. And data is something we talk about on this podcast all the time. And it's one thing to collect that data, it's another thing to do something with it and put it to use. And, you have to analyze it. You have to figure out, what does all this data mean? And then you have to somehow do something with it that makes a difference. So,
right.
I mean, we're still going to be talking about data for sure. There's no question about that. So, that's some good insight into 2022. Let's look beyond that. Let's look 5 years, 10 years down the road. What does the factory of the future look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I think 2020s, this decade, I think this is a decade of AI, right? And the reason I say that is I think like if you just look back like 10 years when I first got started with AI, it was almost like a research project feel to it. Almost like you can do that in silo, maybe publish a few papers, and you and your small group can get together and talk about mathematical equations. But
Sounds like a fun party, right?
exactly. Oh yeah, for really fun parties. We have special cocktails. But I think in the last decade, AI has kind of really burst into mainstream consciousness, and more people now have an understanding of, what can this be used for. Right? They may or may not know the underlying mechanics of AI, but they know what it can be used for, and also combine that with the hardware to run AI. It's getting really inexpensive. Like Nvidia is obviously leading the pack, but they're building hardware that makes it so easy to quickly build an AI application. So because of that, this decade is going to be the decade of AI. And what I mean by that is, today, if you think about it, cloud is everywhere. It's almost, we don't even talk about it. It's a normal thing now. But just
Right.
as recently as 2005 to 10, people were thinking cloud as this novel, new, cute thing that may or may not exist, right? So I think I think that's what's going to happen is AI is going to become a part of our everyday technology stack, just like cloud became part of our life. Like right now, we are talking this video conference, that's cloud in action, right?
That's
So
right.
you
That's
use
right.
email. So I think AI is going to be that, and within manufacturing, I think it's gonna show up. All right, so just like how manufacturing embraced cloud, because like for example, if you go to a manufacturing company, the way they do say accounting or store order data or inventory or manage payments to their vendors, all of that is now being done. Most manufacturers, they're moving to the cloud, right? So similarly, I think as they identify more and more of their work, simpler, like something that can be automated should be automated, right? At least in a large manufacturing company. So I think with that, you'll see more and more AI proliferating the enterprise, and also it'll be like you won't even realize that you're using AI today. Cloud, you know, really, it's so ubiquitous. Even talking about it feels redundant because, of course, everything is going to be, is the cloud is being used for it. So AI will have that feel, and I would say when people won't even realize AI is being used within their own company. I think that's the true victory for AI, is like just like search engines. Like most
Yeah.
people don't really think of. So I think that's what's going to happen in this decade, and I think obviously there'll be some big winners. Companies that embrace it early are going to win really big.
Right. I do think that sometimes, like when you, going back to our very first example of Netflix, when you turn on Netflix and it recommends a show and you click it without even thinking, now wondering, how did they know? How did Netflix know that I would enjoy this program? I mean, I
Right.
think, as you said, it's going to just be there and we're not even going
Right.
to realize it. And that's probably happening within manufacturing as well. There are probably some solutions that have been implemented that the majority of the employees at the plant didn't even know was there.
Right.
They just know the benefits and that they
Right.
have a solution, but they don't necessarily know that that's, quote, artificial intelligence. So
Yeah,
sometimes
and
it's
that's
kind of a hidden thing.
100%. And sometimes it's more like outside of my parents and my wife, I think Netflix knows me better than most of my friends. I think at this
I
point,
could say that as well. I think so. I'm always amazed that they recommend the programs that I just end up loving.
yeah,
But then when I
it's
go to try
crazy.
to find something else, I can never find it. So,
Yeah,
and
no, it's crazy.
Amazon has me pegged too, I must admit.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think I've been a very like a long-standing customer, both Amazon and Netflix, and
Absolutely, me
yeah.
too.
I mean, at this point, it just feels like yeah, they know me too well at this point. So
Exactly. Down
yeah,
to the
yeah,
type of toothpaste that you use or whatever.
right,
I mean, I think
right.
it's really interesting though, and I do see a lot of these solutions coming through in manufacturing, and it will, I think, as you said, just become a part of the fabric of our lives. It's going to just
Yeah,
be something that's there that doesn't scare us anymore when we start to
right,
see the benefits and how it makes our
right.
life and our jobs easier. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
this has really been fun. I love we could talk about this all day, but of course we don't have all day. But I do want to give you a chance to give us just some final thoughts. Just tell us whatever it is you think that we need to know about this area of expertise that you have, this artificial intelligence expertise. What else would you like to tell our listeners and just enlighten us?
yeah. I think outside of AI, just kind of be it career or building products, building a startup, or just life in general. I just think finding your core purpose is I think it just makes it a lot easier to keep going, like keep going time and again. And I think there's a very good Japanese concept called ikigai, which kind of it represents like it's a Venn diagram with four circles, right,
Okay.
intersecting, and obviously when you find your sweet spot at the center of it, that's your zen, right? So it means that you're doing work that that you find meaningful, right? Something that that you love doing. The world needs it. something that will get you paid, something you're good at. So these four things, when they intersect, the sweet spot is when you think that, it's just, you don't get tired, you don't get bored, you just keep going. And I think that being that relentless pursuit, eventually you win out, because guess what? You refuse to go down. So I think that matters a lot, and also surrounding yourself with people, the right people. I think it really, the good characteristics, they rub off on you, and it just kind of, it elevates your own game. So I think hanging out with the right people, I think it matters a lot. And lastly, the third one is your time, right? You should, it's a very precious resource. You should get good at deploying it wisely. Think of it as a resource, right, that you deploy. And also, I would say, spend time on things you're good at, and things you're not good at, get an expert, right? So a lot of
That's
people
right.
try to do everything. I would say that double down on things you're great at, and things you're average at. There are so many experts, right? So you just leverage them. So I think some of this has,
It's very good advice.
these have been it's a guiding principles for my own career and life. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. But too, when you do something that you love, generally those are the things you do well. And
Right.
the things that you do well are often the things that you love. So when you can, as you said, when you can find that sweet spot, that's great. And then I got a picture in my head when you said hang out with people, who are like-minded and who encourage you and who want you to succeed. I thought about these cocktail parties you have with all your math friends solving math equations and what that might be like to be a fly on that wall. As we said before, those are probably some fun parties.
That's those get fun after a couple of beers, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe you come up with some great solutions for artificial intelligence and manufacturing at those parties. So it's a good idea.
100%.
Well, that sounds great. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. It's really been fun. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Michelle. It was a great discussion, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. If you have interesting information to share and want to contact me about being a guest on a future episode of this podcast, please send me an email at michelle@navigatecontent.com. You can also send me questions that I will have my expert guests answer for you on a future episode. And in the meantime, please check out my book series on modern manufacturing to read more than 30 real-world case studies about how global companies are using smart technology and innovation to build the factory of the future. All the links to the books and articles mentioned in this podcast are in the show notes. Have a great week, and please join me for the next episode of Factory of the Future.